We get so comfortable with doing the things we're good at that we rarely give ourselves an opportunity to do things we are not good at. Improvisation is the best tool to get out of fight or flight and to get into a different part of your brain, hopefully one that's creative. And that is your state of flow. That's when you're doing something and you're like, I'm better at this than anything else.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Keynote Curators podcast. I'm Seth Deckman, your Keynote Curator. Our guests today are Anthony Veneziale and Vivek Venugopal. Did I hit that? Are we done? I mean, is it over?
Thank you, everyone. We're good.
Thank you very much. Please just comment and subscribe. I'm really excited for so many reasons. This is a little bit of a departure. We're making history in the fact that we have more than one guest. So it's just the more the merrier. More minds are better than mine. And we have Tony Award-winning performers on our podcast. So we're making history all over the place. Don't worry, they'll show up later, guys. That's the surprise guest. But as we get this candle lit, I just want to dive right into the deep end. It truly is an honor and a privilege to have you all. And I've worked with Freestyle Plus, and you just bring such excitement and originality to what occurs in, we'll call the keynote space, because I know you all deliver the Un-Keynote. But as we dive right into the deep end here, Freestyle Plus is often thought of as improv, which you are. And for those of us who I consider myself a rookie in the improv world, at the very least, we know that it's one of the grounding concepts is yes and. But I want to take it even farther than that. And I'm going to count on you all, the two smarter guys of the three of us, to go a little bit further. Bear with me. I'll land the plane in about 2 or 3 hours. But, we're coming off the pandemic still, and mental awareness, mental health, mental well-being has been destigmatized. And improv, in my view, and the work that I've done with you that you've brought to my clients, I can say firsthand, I've seen the value of having the tool and the skill and the playfulness that improv brings to bring a certain new approach to mindfulness. And then from there, we can open up a whole can of worms, which I really want to get into, about cognitive health and regenerating the mind and accessing dormant creativity. Either one of you, go first, fight over it, improv over it. Set the table a little bit for, how you see that works for our audience.
Awesome. So to boil this all down, which we'll try to boil the ocean as quickly as we possibly can, there's a part of your brain, and it's an incredible machine, right? Like a lot of people try to explain the brain in these 3 different phases. There's the deep mode network. Then you've got sort of like the reptilian, that's the deep part. Then you've got the mammalian part of your brain where like I can move and walk on 2 legs. And then you've got the most recent part, prefrontal cortex. So those 3 parts of our brain are what makes Homo sapiens, Homo sapiens. And one of the things that's hardest is that you've got this thalamus that is between your prefrontal cortex and your fight or flight, your reptilian brain. And that thalamus is the thing that tells us when we're in danger. Now, it has been trained for many, many thousands of years. And only recently do we have emails and houses and firearms. And all those things keep us relatively safe, unless you're in the United States. And what tends to happen is that we get an email that seems threatening and we use our fight or flight. We go right to that part of our brain, which is like, a lion's going to eat me. Now, that is how our operating system has been for millennia, deeply rooted inside of this operating system. However, we have a choice to make, which is, can we create a healthy hypothalamus regulation? So specifically, your medial dorsal hypothalamus regulation is where you're taking that information and then turning it into all the things that flood your body with like pheromones and dopamine and endorphins. And so improvisation is the best tool to control that part of your brain. Flat out. to get out of fight or flight and to get into a different part of your brain, hopefully one that's creative, which is also known as your medial lateral prefrontal cortex. It's sort of right over here, just above your eyes and below that sort of front ridge here. And that is your state of flow. That's when you're doing something and you're like, I'm better at this than anything else. For some people, it's like yoga. And for some people, it's knitting. And for some people, it's coding, and can be any number of things. That part of your brain is a really beautiful part of your brain, because when you get there, it mutes that sort of judgment part of your brain, the thing that says, like, you shouldn't be doing this. You need an MBA. Why are you giving a keynote? That part of your brain tends to be the loudest part of our brain. It's the critical part of our brain, and it holds us back from doing a lot. I'm not saying it's bad, but we don't always need to be in that part of our brain. And Vivek, I think you might exemplify that better than any other human I know, because when I first met Vivek, he was doing an incredible enterprise sales job at a very big tech company. I'm not going to say what it is. Rhymes with winked fin. And while he was there, he was doing that sales job, but he was moonlighting as an improviser. And I'll let Vivek maybe take over now why he exemplifies the difference between the judging brain and the creative brain.
Well, I'll say, when we run our workshops, when we do our exercises, we tell people we're essentially teaching you shortcuts to get into that flow state. When you need to get into that flow state, sometimes you might need to use that fight or flight judging part of your brain, right? It's a survival voice. Sometimes you might get an email from a lion saying, I'm coming to eat you. So you should take that as seriously as a lion coming to eat you.
You shouldn't just stop and be amazed by the fact that a lion knows your email address.
I mean, save that for later.
Okay.
Save that for later. You can really dive into the lion's tech prowess.
They must be using voice to text activation, I think.
That's right. They don't use AI. They use lion. All right. When, as Anthony said, I'd been working in enterprise sales for a long time. And one of the things I realized after I started to get exposed to improv and I took some improv classes and things, were that every successful sales call I was doing, every successful sales meeting I had were like mini improv shows. Because what was happening in those meetings is I was getting these offerings from the audience. My audience was my client. I'd ask them what were some of the troubles they were having, what were some of the challenges, and then I would take their answers and weave them into the story structure that I already had, right? I already knew the message I needed to send to them, but being able to weave that in was the improv part of it. And so that's something that I had started to talk to a lot of sales teams and sales leaders about, which is this idea that you can't go into any sales meeting expecting that you know exactly how the conversation is going to go. You can't be like, oh, they're going to say this, then I'm going to say that, and then they're going to say this, and I'm going to say, oh, I've got slide 3. It says it answers that exact question. Because you go in, they ask you one question, throws you off the rails, and if you're the kind of person who's memorized everything and you're living in that judgment part of your brain where you're like, everything has to go A, B, C, D, that's a tremendous disservice to you, right? What happens then is you need to get into that mindset where you go, all right, I'm going to go in here with a completely open mind. I know what I know. I just need access to that part of my brain. Anthony talked about the medial prefrontal cortex. That houses all of our memories and our experiences. So doing exercises that allow you to get into that mindset so that when you get in the room and you get asked a question that could be as simple as, what do you plan to eat for dinner tonight? And if you're not prepared for it and you're not in the right mindset, that can trigger fight or flight or freeze immediately.
Yeah. And that's been the source of many, let's say, heated discussions among couples in the home about what's for dinner or what are we going to do about dinner.
It's the worst. It's the worst part of adulthood.
Yeah, it's a top 3. But Vivek, it's I can relate to it on a personal thing. I mean, let's bring it all back to me because it's all about me. But I'm in sales and I'm the keynote curator, and I provide keynote speakers, in this case, the Un-Keynote, to my clients. And as you said, you prepare and what they need to know. And I don't want to, litigate it out, but it's what we think they need to know. And then they give you what they really need to know. Exactly. And the ability to be open and disarm your own predispositions is the art. And The question for both of you or either of you, or at the same time, we can try that again, is, you're both leaning on the science of it all.
Yeah.
Improv has been around for decades, but now that you contextualize it with the hard science, the data, the understanding of how the brain works, all the way from, being evolved and running away from a saber-toothed tiger or a lion emailing you, what benefit does that have to understanding it, both as an intellectual exercise, but also the great salespeople, I would say, Vivek, go in and read the room and dance in the conversation, and the music is changing, or the tempo is changing, or the body language is different, and they've done that innately anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we can argue about when improv was created, but realistically, every single conversation you have is improvised. It's unless you're standing on stage and you've all memorized your lines, pretty much any real life conversation is improvised. But what I loved about improv as I started to learn it and get to know it is that it is a tremendous tool that has been used, and I'll get to sales in a second because this does not describe most salespeople, but it's a tool that's been used for a long time by folks who don't feel like they belong in order to get into that mindset where they can feel like they're part of this community. Viola Spolin, who is considered the mother of modern day improv, created these improv games that we all know and love now as a way to help immigrant children and immigrant families feel like they belonged in society in Chicago, right? At the Hull House. And so that's the kind of the birth of the modern day improv. And it's only been recently that we've actually spent some time studying the science behind it. So Anthony and I and Freestyle Plus have worked very closely with a lab out of UCSF with a doctor named Dr. Charles Lim, who's been studying the effects of improv on your brain, like what actually happens when you get into that flow state, which is how we know as much as we do about it. But so for some people that has been innate. It's always been a case, right? And we all know people like this who are like, oh, I can just go in and I can connect with anyone, I can build rapport, build relationships. But there are, for so many people, that isn't necessarily the case in that environment. And this is something that Anthony and I have pushed back on a lot when people go, I'm an extrovert, I'm an introvert, right? This dichotomy of like, I'm one or the other. The truth is you are an introvert or an extrovert in whatever environment you're in. So you have all these people who are like
ambivert.
Exactly. Almost everyone is an ambivert, right? And some people go, I'm an introvert unless I'm with my family at the dinner table. And then, oh boy, I am on, right? And so our goal is to help people access that part of their brain, access that part of their personality when they need to, even because every one of these conversations can be treated like a performance. That's not to say you're being inauthentic. It is to say you are getting into that mental state where you go, oh, I'm on right now. And if I fail at this, saber-toothed tiger is not going to descend on me.
Right.
Yeah. If I may add on real quick, Viola Spolin created a bunch of games for the Hull House, like Vivek was saying, for immigrant kids who were new to that community, right? That community also was keeping a lot of people at an arm's length. Sound familiar? This keeps happening throughout history where people get displaced, or you are in a new situation where you feel disenfranchised. Games are the perfect way to do a low-risk exposure therapy version of the skills you need to be successful in that situation. And so that is simply what we do. We distill, and we've built all of these games that we know are like the silver bullet for going to do a talk, or the silver bullet for collaborating with your team at top level, or the silver bullet for feeling creative as you try a new project. So all of these games that we've been curating and sort of understanding, we've been doing now for the last 10 years. We have so much data that in our busiest year, we will sometimes be on the road and provide somewhere between, 200 to 250 trainings in a year. That's not the keynotes. The keynotes we do a ton of that on top as well. We do somewhere between 30 and 60 un-keynotes a year. The work that we've been doing, we've got all this data. And so we've been iterating over time on those games to make them these silver bullets. We have so much fun getting to do it. And in fact, can we do a game right now? Because everything that we're saying, sure, it's fine, but the proof is in the pudding, right? Which is actually experiencing the learning firsthand. So
I was just gonna ask you if we could, for those of you out there that are listening, like it, love it, subscribe, jump in, and play along with us.
Awesome. So we're going to play a game called Wrong Answers Only. Now, the reason why we play this game is very similar to what Vivek was saying, which is how do we help lower that sort of threshold around I can only speak up when I'm right? Now, this is something that our society does a lot, especially when you're at school. You can only speak up when you know the right answer. And if you don't, you're ridiculed. So that tends to shut a lot of doors down in our creative flow. So we're going to do a game to kind of break through some of those crystallized synaptic connections that say no, no, no. And we're going to try to get towards something that says, give it a shot, give it a shot, give it a shot. It's called
It's literally like the anti-improv, only get it right, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Only speak up when you're right. So this game, Wrong Answers Only, we'll each lead around. And you lead around by asking a question. And then after you ask the question, each one of us will give an answer. And we'll do that twice. So we'll all give two answers to this question. So for example, I may ask a question like, what's the best way to make ice cubes? And then Vivek would give me a wrong answer to that question.
You pour some water into a volcano.
Great.
Okay.
Seth,
brilliant
answer.
It's 100% wrong. Good job.
Thank you.
Seth, go ahead and give us a wrong answer to that question. How do you make, what's the best way to make ice cubes?
Well, the first thing I would do is get a bottle of ketchup, open it up, pour it into a bowl, put some Fruit Loops in there, and then just eat it.
Yes. Perfect. All right. I'll give an answer as well to my own question, which is thumbtacks, barbed wire fences, and olives.
Intriguing. I see what you're doing there. I like that.
Yeah.
And we're going to do another round of answers now even faster. Vivek, go.
Okay.
Hippopotamus.
Great. Seth.
Yep.
Chandelier.
Ooh.
Okay. Amazing. And I will end it with broken down diesel car.
Yes. Amazing.
Boom. That's a mic drop right there.
Perfect. Vivek, you ask us a question, and then we'll do, again, 2 rounds of answers. And then Seth, you'll ask a question. We'll do 2 rounds of answers.
Okay, great.
Game.
I need to renew my passport. What's the easiest way to do that, Seth?
Okay. Go into your toolbox and get a saw and 3 light bulbs, put them into a Federal Express package, and send it to your grandma.
Perfect. Thank you. A
Okay.
lot of steps. Anthony?
Great. Yeah. Fill out the paperwork and send it to the U.S. government.
That is a wrong answer. Very good. Very good. So apparently irony is allowed.
Yeah. I mean, pouring a cup of coffee into my desk drawer feels like the right move here. Seth, one more. I need to renew my passport. What's the fastest way to do it?
Well, the first thing you do is sit in a chair, look out the window, take your current expired passport, open up the window, and just throw it out.
Done.
Great.
And
move to Atlantis.
Ooh. Okay. That's brilliant.
I was kind of thinking I would get an infinity scarf, put it around my neck, and then slowly tighten it. All right, Seth, ask us a question.
Okay. How do you make an egg white omelet?
Crack an egg.
Yeah.
Take the yolk out of it, which is the yellow part, and then throw it at the wall.
Find a Caucasian friend and have them make it with no spices.
Dude, that is probably almost too correct. Okay, so you might have to give another one. My wrong answer is get a pan, don't put anything in it, and just take an Un-Keynote workshop, and then it'll appear.
Taunt a lion with an email.
Ooh. Fill a diesel engine with petrol.
Get on a unicycle and climb Everest.
Great.
Yes.
That's the game. That is wrong answers only. So, Vives, you want to lead us in a quick debrief on it?
Yeah, Seth, tell us how it felt to do that game.
Totally liberating. I could say, if I did word association, unconstrained, and a complete lid off, full self-expression.
Yeah.
I mean, like swinging out, I felt like I was channeling my 10-year-old twins. We do something at the dinner table lately, which is we do these knock knock jokes, and it's so similar. There's like no knock knock, aren't you glad I didn't say banana and all that stuff or whatever. I mean, it's literally like, knock knock, who's there? Spaghetti, spaghetti who? It's time for you to go to bed. Ah, ha, 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 ha. It's like, the point is like the most ridiculous things, it's like,
anti-humor.
So it's very freeing. It's very freeing. I actually feel like I was practicing for this because of our knock knock dinner jokes, but I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, no. That's exactly right. I mean, I think, when we run workshops, when we do our Un-Keynotes and we have these exercises, we have these moments of debriefing, where we want to hear from the people who've just gone through it. How are they feeling? What was challenging? What was easy? But then importantly, how do you think this is applicable to the work that you do? So Seth, I'll ask you this question. How do you think this helps with your work?
When I speak to people, I often catch myself coming in predisposed. Like there's an already always kind of thing that I have thought out or planned or approach. And I can just see as I'm speaking it, that already always thing that's there is so constraining. So this could, while I think I should still be grounded in my preparation and some intentions and notions of a more wider berth of what I want to accomplish, I could see that I can make more room for dancing and having this be openness,
Yeah, and I think the important thing here is to tell people, we're not saying that you should do this during client calls. Don't give wrong answers only. But this is it's a weird thing to try to wrap your head around, like where I have to try and, as Anthony said, those neural pathways that say you have to only speak up when you have the right answer are like hardened in our brains. That's been reinforced our whole lives. So this slowly starts to allow us to say, okay, it's okay if I don't know the right answer. And then, it's a hard thing to do, but that's why we practice it, right? We want to practice harder than we play. And so when you're actually having a conversation with a client and they ask you a question that you weren't anticipating, it's not to say you make up a wrong answer. It's to say that because you've played this game a bunch, your brain has access to all of these different memories and experiences, and you can actually pull it. You can actually find the right answer when you need to. So that's why we like this game so much.
What are some of the more like surprising, if you could enumerate out some of what the tendencies are, typically what your debrief responses are, probably I'm right there in the mean, but what are some of the more surprising ones? And then, like you said, you maybe don't want to do it on a call where there's things at stake, but to develop that muscle, almost like being in a gymnasium, the reps, and you make room for more of this play than the hardwired stuff. But when you do these workshops and these Un-Keynotes, what's surprising and what delights you so much that you get the feedback on?
For me, it's almost always that it's hard.
Yeah. Like I was just going to say, when someone goes, I hated this, you're like, oh, amazing. That's the best.
Yeah. We get so comfortable with doing the things we're good at that we rarely give ourselves an opportunity to do things we are not good at. And so often we'll clump then in those clusters as well. So we then get the thing that I think is the death knell for creativity and also entrepreneurship, which is sameness. And I know there's all of these different concepts out there in the world, but science and nature proves over and over again that biodiversity is success. So diversity is an incredibly successful outcome for us. And that's diversity of thought, right? And it also comes because people have different backgrounds. The thing for me that I love the most about that is when people say this was uncomfortable, this was hard for me, I can see, and we were talking about it before, those crystallized synaptic connections, what happens when you go over and over and over, they slowly start to break apart. And that's the thing that improv does, again, better than any other adaptogenic skill, is that it allows you to break apart some of those preferred pathways. And I'll just very quickly give an example of what I mean by that. So listeners, people who are at home, where is the garbage can you use the most in your house? Yeah, for a lot of people, it can be like under their desk or maybe in their, kitchen or under the sink in their kitchen. Most people, it's under the sink in the kitchen. Yeah. And so today, go home, move that trash can somewhere new in your house. If you're brave, move it to a different room. If you're not, just put it somewhere different in the kitchen. A, whoever you live with will move it back. B, you will go to that trash can where it used to be to empty your garbage, and it won't be there anymore. That's a preferred pathway. And those are habits that we aren't even aware of. They are unknown unknowns to us. And that's also a very dangerous proposition in the business world, because unknown unknowns typically are those things that come to kind of haunt us later. So we love this exercise because it helps you to move the trash can and it gets you uncomfortable. And getting comfortable with being uncomfortable is the best skill set we can help human beings with in the world.
Yeah. And I'll add with the debriefs, our as Anthony said, our success metric is people saying that something was really hard, because it means that we've been able to create that psychological safety in the room. Because it's a very difficult thing for people to admit that something was hard around their colleagues, around their peers, around their managers. And so we spend a good amount of time at the top of any interaction or experience that we have, building that psychological safety through play and through beats, right? Those are the two things that have clinically been proven to develop connection and build trust and safety. So I want to make sure we get to the beats part of it, because most people are probably listening being like, this is all great. Why are you called Freestyle Plus? Right. Anthony, can you tell us why we're called Freestyle Plus?
Anthony.
It's on my job. That's on my job. But I'll just quickly finish that point, which is that when we've been able to create that environment, when we've been able to create that atmosphere, then people speak up. And when someone speaks up and says that this was really hard, and everyone else hears that they did not immediately get fired for saying that, it opens up even more. And so those debriefs, the exercises that we do in any one of our experiences kind of scaffold on each other. So the things we're asking people to do towards the end of an experience are things that they would not have been able to do if we just walked in and we go, try this exercise, right? And the debriefs similarly scaffold. The debriefs that we get towards the end are so rich. They have so much value. And we always tell people, don't look at us when you're debriefing, because we're not the intended audience here. Teach each other. Right? Anthony talks about this Freirean pedagogy that we use, where like the wisdom of the room is far greater than the wisdom of the 2 clowns or 5 clowns standing in the front of the room. Right? So look at each other, learn from each other. Those debriefs are where all the learning actually happens. We play, but then we learn from each other through those debriefs.
Yeah. And Anthony, just before you walk us through the beats part of it, Vivek, I've seen firsthand. We've done some amazing shows with Freestyle Plus, and some of them have been quite elaborate over a course of days, and some very tailored, detailed type of workshopping. And the mastery of, because creating the psychologically safe space to swing out, to get to play and make the wrong answers, not worry about getting fired or judged, is important. But there's a step before that, I believe, and I've seen it play out, and you all deal with it in such a mastery. And I'm not stroking, just to do it. It's there's the cynic, and there's the resigned people,
right?
And one of these, airy fairy things. Each situation is unique. How do you disarm that? How do you soften the ground there? And I would say there's not one right answer, but we're going to get to the beats in a second. But I always say this: in the world of AI, in the world of every app that is trying to optimize and make more efficient and take the human out of things. These exercises and what Freestyle Plus is providing, and this activating these neurons and this part of our dormant creativity is more important and has more value than ever before. So I just wanted to make that editorial. Okay, go ahead. And
thank you, Seth.
Beats.
So yeah, I love everything that we just said. I think improvisers are the first gen conversational designers, right? So AI relies on something called conversational design. Conversational design are large language model sets that break down the different interdependencies in language, understanding how the mechanics to build up towards the answers of a language set work. The thing it doesn't include is prosody. And so prosody is the ability to convey tone. It's starting to get there. It's starting to understand prosody. And that's something that I think is going to really, revolutionize AI at some point very, very soon. Prosody is the ability of tone to inform through the different sound waves that emanate from our vocal box, a sense of warmth, harshness, whatever it might be, right? So that
really?
Boom. Chomsky is the sing-song nature of language. And now Chomsky thought it was something that was pre-programmed into us. But there's a lot of studies out there now, and I think what conversational design is getting to, which is saying, actually, it's all contextualized from the environment in which you are born into, meaning motherese, the language that our mothers speak and sing and hum to us. That is actually what the original conversational design is. And we in improv are tapping into that. We are speaking motherese. We're understanding the temperature of the room because we have attenuated in many, many different versions a large language model set that makes us good at fill in the blank here. You can put us into any situation because we have gone through many of them in our minds when we make believe and play between two people. So that conversational design is something that we are exquisite at. And we try to prove that at the top of anything we do by playing at our speed. So here's an analogy I often use. Penguins on land are incredibly awkward. They should not still exist in the world. Penguins in water are little torpedoes, and they can swim almost 30 miles an hour. And you're like, whoa, that thing just ate 15 fish. We show what penguins in water look like as human beings at the beginning of anything we do by doing something called a foundation of freestyle. So somebody will hold a beat. So there's a beatboxer up on that stage. That already is impressive, right? That's the motherese of music. All music comes from the heartbeat that we hear inside in the womb, in utero. That music that informs us at the top of our Un-Keynote.
Wait a minute. Was that a set of twins? I thought if that was in utero, I thought it sounded like no, fraternal. Okay, keep going.
Fraternal, not identical, and one of them has pulmonary ventriculation. So yeah,
a little bit.
So yeah, a little PVT. So that beat happens at the beginning of the thing, and like Vivek said, beats help us to syncopate. So there's this incredible wiring mesh network we as humans have, and when you start getting into a beat together, you actually syncopate and you send off all of these different pheromones that say, we're one. We belong here together. That's why people love concerts and music tours, and they show up by the throngs because they feel as though they are one and they are connected. If we can do that at the top of an Un-Keynote, we've already, I think, struck a chord, pun intended. And that chord, it resonates, and its resonance should be now the thing that people out there are saying, oh, this is what humans are capable of. So Seth, give me 3 words that have nothing to do with each other. They could be your favorite words. They can be random words. You can literally look them up right now. Whatever you want to do, just any 3 words that you want.
Okay. Pumpkin, book, and chair.
Pumpkin, book, and chair.
Great. So Vives, just give me a snap. I think that'll be the easiest thing. Yeah. Okay. Yes, look at this. Don't ever stop and stare. If I had no head, well, it's a pumpkin on a chair. That is right. Call me Tarrytown, where I tally forth. I am known as Peter Pumpkin Eater in the north, but in the south, it's Sleepy Hollow. So please don't feel that shout, because if I see you in the woods, you will have doubt. I will cut you down and take you back there. And that is why Tim Burton mastered in the air.
Bravo. Bravo.
So it's just taking words, using them as inspiration. So paying honor to the words that we just got, and then finding some sort of impulse or beat or association to the rhythm that then brings up whatever floodgates of communication I'm able to tap into. So that's called freestyling. And Freestyle Plus typically starts our Un-Keynotes doing a little bit of a freestyle with words that they value. So the words come to us from the people in the audience who are telling us what the outcomes they hope to be of that day are. Mm-hmm. And then those words are from that moment of the people in the room with us. That's it. AI is getting better at that, but we as human beings can do that the best because we have a chemical reaction in our brains that help us to create something called oxytocin. That's the end of the road. This all leads to something called oxytocin. It's also known as the love hormone. It comes from the concept of mothers feeding babies. And oxytocin is when you are emitting those hormones that say, I trust and love this community.
Yeah, and I could see how at the outset, first of all, you're putting yourself on the hook. You're walking the walk, talking the talk, and it can be disarming. And, then you're kind of setting the table. I call it softening the ground, putting the seeds in there for everybody and anybody participating to pull in. I just think it's an opportune moment to just share with our audience and our listeners. If you haven't subscribed, go ahead and do that. But, Freestyle Plus has a really storied career, and gentlemen, calibrate me in where I'm wrong here, but it originated from Speechless Inc. and Freestyle Love Supreme and the Freestyle Love Supreme Academy. And both of those groups just were fostering and dedicated and really looking to expand people's capacities around improvisation. And from there, expanding on confidence, resilience, creativity, being improvisational in your life. Everybody in the group is just hyper talented. And what they bring is this, I would say, a transformational aspect to every type of audience. And where I want to turn the corner here is mental fitness through play and self-expression, and how improv and kind of what we've been talking about, just walking it down the road even further, just speak to that. Ultimately, the meaningful connections that are made, whether it's on a sales call, whether it's with a team collaborating at an organization, a trade association, at a conference, whatever it is. And before we do that, I just want to make a note to self, get in touch with my therapist, why I think pumpkin, chair, and book are important. Schedule a debrief session on that. Okay, we can continue.
So, Seth, I love that. I think what we're talking about there is now how can we apply some of these skills to a broader set of our life? And what we call that is mindful activeness. So inside of the studies that we have been doing, we have seen that the brain gets to this certain part where it stops judging. And that's what meditation is mostly in Eastern philosophy has been practicing and working towards. And it does it in an isolated self-immolation type way. So typically meditation is I'm going to remove myself from my community so that I can focus on this inner life that I have. And it's awesome. And meditation, people should absolutely use it. It is more difficult in Western society to attain that removal from our community. Most of us have kids, or not most, but a lot of us have kids. And if you don't, even if you don't, you're interdependent in a different way. Typically, people don't put food in front of your door because you're about to go and do a monastic practice. So you kind of have to figure out how to make a living. Now, what's amazing about meditation is that it occupies a very similar part of your creative flow area when you get very good at it. You stop judging yourself. The same is true around these games. That's what Vivek was saying. They're shortcuts. When you play these games, you are serving the present moment. In your brain, you are feeding that same part of your brain the medial lateral prefrontal cortex, as you do when you meditate. So when we put people into these fMRI machines, that's what we are seeing. We're seeing improvisers have a very similar state of flow to meditation. Now, what does that mean? It means they tend to get to these delta waves inside of their brain that allow them to not be so prescriptive and so synaptically concise through the same routes over and over again. That repetition, that part of your brain gets plaques and tangles because of that repetition. So plaques and tangles lead to a lot of brain functioning default. So Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia, most of it is ascribed to those plaques and tangles. So preventing those plaques and tangles are something that meditation and improvisation do incredibly well. And that's why we call it active mindfulness, because it makes mindfulness happen with other people. There's then this secondary benefit, which is something called prosociality, which I love so much. It's why I do this. I do this because I grew up in a family where I was the youngest by far, and I didn't really belong in my family. Like, I was just too young. They were like, why would we bring him along? He's 7 years younger than we are. And so that made me feel a sense of disenfranchised. That made me felt separate from my family for a very long time. When I got into an improv family, no matter the age of anybody, what they were, they mattered in that community. They felt seen, they felt heard, and I felt a sense of prosociality because of the play that I enjoyed. That means I placed the good of the many over the good of one. This is a very non-American concept, and this is very hard for many, many human beings, especially in Western society. But through these games, they get better at it. And I do believe that prosociality is the medicine our country more than anything needs right now.
Yeah.
And I'll add the concept of mental fitness, I think, is super important here, right, Seth? We know, we're very aware of the fact that attending one Un-Keynote, doing one workshop doesn't mean you're going to be like, great, I'm done. I figured it out. I'm all good. I listened to this podcast. I got it.
Exactly.
It is something that you need to keep practicing, right? These Un-Keynotes are almost like a 2-hour boot camp that you go to at the gym, where you learn how to use all the different pieces of equipment. I've never been to a gym. I don't know what they're called. But then the onus is on you to keep practicing, right? This is something that you have to build as a monthly, weekly, daily practice. The interesting thing about creating habits, as we know from the myriad of books that are written about it, is that it's a really difficult thing to achieve behavior change without first creating a habit. And in order to create a habit, it needs to be something that you actually enjoy doing. There needs to be some sort of dopamine release, right? So these games are a great way to say, hey, play these games every week, every day, whatever it is, with your kids, with your partners, with your colleagues, and that can start to build that muscle. But it's sometimes really difficult. Something that we struggled with for a long time as folks who teach kind of applied improv is, in order to practice these games, you actually need to find someone else who did the workshop as well, who understands the language, who's able to yes and with you or whatever it is. That was always kind of a sticking point for us. We'd say, we do this great workshop and people say, great, how do I practice? And I say, go find the person who's sitting next to you. In the last couple of years, that completely changed because of AI, because of the fact that we now could use AI not as a tool to give us answers. We've actually adapted it so that it becomes a tool to ask us questions that make us be the generative model here, like makes our brain go into that generative space. So that's what we've built out now as a tool for people to use after they've gone through our experiences. So now anyone who goes through one of our Un-Keynotes gets access to one or many of our games that are digitized, that you are playing with a generative AI partner, which is an even lower risk exposure therapy, because you're just texting with something that can't judge you, that can't fire you, that can't call you stupid. It can, but we've trained it not to.
Right. I mean, you leaving the door open for some. But I just think that's brilliant, because it becomes a true collaborator. And I've always felt that little that I've used ChatGPT or whatever, the prompts, I feel like I'm collaborating. I write a poem, I don't like it, and then I say, give me a little bit something else. So there is a collaboration, but you've kind of flipped it.
That's right. That's right. And that's the beauty of it. Yeah, that's the magic.
Yeah. I'll quickly try to land this plane. I know that we started about an hour ago.
No, take your time. This is great. We only have, 32 seconds left, but go ahead. Take your time.
Perfect.
Hurry up.
If you go to a cooking class to learn how to make pumpkin pie, you'll get to do it one time. And typically you'll try yours and you're like, it's not as good as the teacher's. But then you go home and you make pumpkin pie and you look back at that book that you got. You sit in your chair and you're like, geez, how do I get this? How do I make the perfect pumpkin? And you keep trying over and over and over again, right? And you go back to that book, you go back to that chair, you try, you error, you try, you error. And then you get better at it. But what happens when people give you something that's not pumpkins? That's what this does. Improv allows you to take anything, pumpkins, rutabaga, strawberry, rhubarb, zucchini. You can make any kind of pie using these techniques. And these games that we've started to build allow you to become not just great at making a pumpkin pie, but great at making anything.
Yeah. I mean, that's why you get paid the big bucks, Antonio, because you just crystallize. It's a universal muscle. It's a universal skill. It's a universal tool that it doesn't matter if the pumpkin's there or not to keep with it, because I'm going to take the plane off again. And this is something I've really been percolating. Buckle your seats. We're going to be cruising at an altitude of about 0 inches. Experiences, activations. And I want this experience. I want to go here. I want to do this. I want to go learn how to do this and that and that. I've been thinking about it, especially in the Occidental, in the Western world of the meism and the individualism. And it's all about, Insta and TikTok, and I'm going to show you. And meanwhile, it's really not what's really happening in life. I'll land the plane in about 3 or 4 minutes. But what I wanted to say was this experience of the Un-Keynote. It's fantastic. The workshops are fantastic. But to underline your point, it's not the experience. It's what you acquire having practiced improv. It's what you've acquired having gone through the workshop and then been able to use, whether it's this artificial intelligence application that you can collaborate with or not. And I'm just such a firm believer. It's not unicycling backwards up Everest as an amazing experience or going and swimming with the sharks or whatever. That's not the end. I bungee jumped. It was the courage that I acquired after I took the plunge. I did improv. It's now I have this deeper sense of grit, resilience, and I know myself as more creative. It's not like, oh, mark that off the bucket list. I did an improv workshop. Hey, now I'm interesting at a bar or a dinner conversation or whatever. And I feel strongly about it.
Yes. Well said.
Preach. Yeah. So for us, we start to put things into this bucket of something called uncertainty tolerance. So uncertainty tolerance can also be seen as novelty, right? And some people embrace novelty and some people are a bit afraid of novelty. It just sort of depends on the trauma that you endured as you grow up. And all of us are that. All of us are these operating machines of trauma. And so how do we then assess that variance of let's call it danger from moment to moment? That's why the human brain developed. And so turning that version of your brain into how do I learn more? How do I better connect to the world around me is, I think, the journey that a lot of people go on, especially around meditation, especially around learning more. But beginner's mindset is also what uncertainty tolerance is. And improv is the best deliverer of that skill set to say, I'm actually here to learn more. I'm here to listen to this room, right? Like what you just said, Seth, that's going to affect me. And I'm going to take that with me. That now is a thread, an invisible thread that will forever connect us, no matter where we are in the world, right? And yes, I might be a Napoli fan, and I might be obsessed with Diego Maradona, and I might say it was not a main de Dieu. That was not a hand of God. That was God itself.
It might have been a forearm wrist or a pinky, but that's another podcast.
His hair hit it first.
as best as standard definition TV could show us at the time.
Exactly.
So now, Seth, real quick, behind you, Messi or Maradona, number 10 behind you on your shelf?
Oh, it's a good question. It's a good question. So that is from Argentina, where I lived for 15 years. And my family, my wife, my children are all dual nationality. My oldest is in Naples this morning as we're doing this recording. And she just sent me 15 pictures, and there's Maradona everywhere. And we were talking briefly, and just yesterday somebody asked me if I had to start it. This is gonna be evergreen. We're recording this. If I had to start, because I was an LA Galaxy 20-year season ticket holder pre-Beckham. When I lived in New Jersey, I saw Pele at the Meadowlands when it first opened.
Cosmos.
Beckenbauer, Canalia, Johan Cruyff, all of them. If you had to start a football team with any player in the history of soccer, Beckham, Zidane, you name it, Messi, Pelé, Ronaldinho, whoever, who would it be? And I did not hesitate to say Diego Armando Maradona, period, full stop. Not even close. Not even like a hesitation, you know? So that's
I would have gone with LeBron James, but that's my answer to everything.
Right. Exactly. That's your answer to who makes the best pumpkin pie. LeBron James.
Exactly.
Well, gentlemen, we're slowly beginning to come to the beginning of the commencement of the end here. Is there anything that I forgot or didn't know? We talk about unknowns that you want to reveal or unconceal to our community that's important for people to expand their capacities, to make an immediate difference that they can go forward in. And, you know, I call it the Andy Warhol question. Everybody has 15 minutes of fame. If you had 15 seconds, 15 minutes, 15 of something as an idea, as a notion, to tell our listeners, to tell the world, in the context of Freestyle Plus in the work you do, what would it be?
I'll say one of the things I think that people love about the work we do is that Trojan horse model, right? Of like, people are going in expecting to really enjoy the experience. And they do, because there's Tony award-winning Broadway performers who are freestyling, beatboxing. You're connecting with your colleagues in a really compelling and authentic way through these exercises. That's the entertainment part of it, right? And so people go in there and they go, that was a lot of fun, and oh my gosh, I actually learned 3 things that I can use immediately. And so to that point, when we talk with event planners, when we speak with people who are putting together big summits or whatever it is, we always say, try and have our Un-Keynote happen as early in the session as possible, as early on the first day as possible, because it truly opens up people's minds so that the way they're able to absorb information is completely different. The way they connect with each other, even at the happy hour later that evening, or the questions that they ask at the Q&A with the executives the next day, all of that is completely transformed because they have gone through this experience together and they have a common vocabulary that they can all lean on. So that I think is something important to put in here. Anthony?
Well, I hope people are listening to this at twice speed, because that was 38 seconds long. And you only
but he said 15 of anything. I was doing 15 of 2 seconds.
Okay,
exactly.
15 seconds.
You missed the math class that day, Anthony.
I missed the math class that day.
So we'll give you notes later.
Okay, so I think what would be right. My 15 seconds would be finding structured play to ritualize throughout your day is how you change your brain and become the human you wish to be.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
Can I say one more 15-second one? Can I get one more 15-second one?
Yeah. Okay.
I'm hearing yes. Okay, great. I do want to say one thing we haven't touched on as we talk about this is the authenticity of it all and allowing people to be themselves. A lot of the work we do and a lot of the exercises we do are encouraging you to be your whole self. So we want people to come away knowing that they are here because of their past experiences, not despite them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's powerful. That shouldn't go by so quickly. I mean, that's powerful. You hear the word authentic a lot, and you hear, oh, the authentic self, but it takes work. It's not easy to remove all those layers of basically our inauthenticities, what we're hiding and what we're pretending. And how many of us, myself included, walk into a meeting or where you're pretending or you're putting on a suit of armor, metaphorically speaking, of I have to be this way, or I have to talk this way, or I have to move a certain way. And I've seen the unraveling and that peeling of the veritable onion that has been mentioned many times in these type of workshops, where you get to what's at the core and the heart of who we are. And so it doesn't go unnoticed, Vivek, what you just said. I think it's super important where we have that, where we have that freedom of self-expression, going back to the first exercise we did and debriefing it, because our constraints are self-imposed. And the work that you all do is that untapping of that and that releasing of that. And, on the face of it, I book keynote speakers. It's a transaction, it's a sale. But deep down in my heart of hearts, I'm incredibly creative at doing it, whether it's finding a way to make it work within the budget, or somehow the content needs to be tailored in a certain way, and the speaker's not that into it, and the buyer's making that demand. And how do I get creative in kind of bringing that together? So once again, it's turning into a commercial about me. So thank you for coming. But
hey, Seth, can we end with a game?
I would love to end with a game so that I can stop talking. Thank you.
So this is something we call three things, and some people call it quick. It's the same game. One of us will give a category to the next person, and then they will name three things in that category. It need not be right. It need not be funny. It need not be intelligent. It just needs to be the first three things that you think of. So speed is the most important part of this.
Okay.
And then after that person says those three things, we all together say three things to ratify and to validate that they said those things out loud. So let's just practice us saying three things together on the count of three. 1, 2, 3.
Three things.
Perfect. Okay, great. So why don't we start by, I'll start by asking, or Vivek, you're going to ask somebody first?
I'm going to ask you first. Anthony.
Okay, but let's not. Let's ask, if it's okay. I think we should ask Seth first, and I have a question to ask Seth already. I'm sorry.
Okay, and I need to come up with three things. You're going to give me a topic area, and I have to say three things.
Yeah,
that's right. So the quick example would be like, Vivek, name three cheeses.
Okay.
American Havarti books.
Boom. Great. So, and then we would say three things, right? So now I'm going to say to you, Seth, three things from this conversation that you want to remember.
Tennis racket, submarine, be authentic. Three things.
Great. Now, Seth, you ask Vivek. You give Vivek a category, and he'll do three things.
Okay. Vivek, three things about Freestyle Plus that we wouldn't know.
It was co-founded by Anthony and Sammy. It is based in San Francisco and New York and everywhere else in the world. And hippopotamuses are kind of cool creatures. Three
things.
I keep leaning because every time I look up, I see this hippopotamus.
Hey, that's like having a cheat sheet. Hold on a minute.
I know, really, it's cheating.
It's investing, not inventing. Okay, Vivek, go ahead. I know you wanted to ask me. Go ahead.
Anthony, three things that you wish everyone knew about brains.
Oh, pumpkin.
Yep.
Pears.
Yep.
Books.
Three things. Beautiful. I think that's a high point, a high note to end on. I just want to just your graciousness and your generosity of spirit, the two of you, and being so playful and bringing the games in was just great. I love the mix of you sharing what happens on the court of these debriefs and how you guys are delighted and surprised, but the science behind it. And, we're all busy. We have things that we do outside of this podcast. I find it hard to believe, but, I've been convinced. And so just thank you for taking the time, being with us, and, giving everything you got to it. So it's just so appreciated.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate
You're
it.
very, very welcome. I want to just add on to that, if I may improv for a minute. It just occurred to me, you do really important work and you do impact lives in an immediacy that one person who's that intro, extro, ambivert that doesn't self-express themselves, that you unlock that. And that impact that it then has when they go to the water cooler, to the parking garage, at dinner that night with their neighbor, and the ripple effect that it has. So as you get thanked a lot for being easy in the pre-production, being easy during the sound check, getting accolades and admiration post Un-Keynote, what I want to thank you for is the times that you don't get thanked, and for those lives that you had an immediate impact on that have rippled out and you've made a difference for. So that's what I really want to thank you for.
Thank you,
That's
Seth.
so lovely. Thank you.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. So to our listeners, thank you again for coming back. For the first timers, the new timers, thanks for joining us. Share with your neighbor, your pumpkin patch grower, your bookseller, your chair repairer, your hypothalamus amygdala. There's a vocabulary test at the end of this, but thank you to everybody. Subscribe, share, and please come back to the Keynote Curator podcast because you're going to be smarter for it.